right, good morning, everybody. Today is Wednesday, May 17th, 2017, and this is Before the First Cup of Jules here on UCY.TV. Happy Wednesday, everyone. It is a beautiful 75 degrees and warmly sunny. Birds tweeting here in upstate New York. They are predicting 89 degrees as a high today and potentially tomorrow, which is pretty warm for mid-May up here in the tundra. So where do we leave off yesterday? We titled the show DARPA, Synthetic Bacteria, Pretty Colors, Gut Reprogramming, and the Internet of Things. We've connected a lot of dots here over the last few weeks. Puzzle pieces that have been dangling around for a few months have finally fallen into place. We've been looking at some of the spore-based bacteria that some different factions of can form flagella. And I don't know, there's not all of them that can form flagella, but there's quite a number of them. There's all kinds of different bacillus spore-forming bacteria. Some are dangerous, some are not. They have been around on the planet as soil bacteria for at least 250 million years. They found some in that Carlsbad cavern down in the WIP facility. And one thing that is very interesting about spore bacteria is that it can lay dormant for a very long time and is not easily killed by much of anything, radiation included, as we found out from the DOD anthrax debacle, where they thought 575 samples had been killed with x-rays. They shipped them all over the planet, and then, whoops, they weren't dead. But they've been doing research, secretive research, all in the name of national security, and these types of bacteria for a very long time, all in the name of biowarfare. And now we're starting to see some dots connecting between these new quote-unquote probiotics that are so wonderful, completely GMO-free. Kind of looked at, the intricacies of the wording of the laws, where non-GMO means that we don't have foreign organisms inserted, but it does not mean necessarily that switches haven't been flipped with CRISPR. There's a little slippery slope going on right now, so they're telling you it's safe. We're seeing some independent bloggers going, well, I don't know about that. I'm going to withhold my opinion till I see a little more research. And that's one of the things that we came upon here, is that there's research, but I'm not seeing a lot of long-term research, at least on humans. And this bacillus bacteria physically can produce drugs, i.e. drugs, little biofactories, substances, particularly antibiotics, that can be used as, quote unquote, as they called them, therapeutics. We found that there's this whole program, MIT and DARPA and the Weiss Institute, Harvard, Broad Institute, George B. Porgy Church. They are all involved in the scientific, quote-unquote, discovery, lots of taxpayer dollars, developing synthetic bacteria that can go into your gut, reprogram your gut. We have also found that they are researching the connections between the gut and the brain and the whole vagus nerve with that ElectRx program, how to stimulate in different areas to create some sort of response on the other end. They could do it chemically, with little not genetically modified, but potentially CRISPR bacteria. Tamp down on inflammation. We found out even change the color of your stool. So when it comes out the other end, the doctor could say, oh, look, it's rainbow, Jenny. You got 7 issues going on in your gut now, as per the smart bacteria that were in your nutraceutical that you took yesterday morning. We are getting to the point where they're able to bag, tag, and surveil our biology. And not just our biology, but potentially, we found out with those little quote unquote nanobots that they could cure cancer with, they're the same sorts of bacteria, little flagellates that can travel around the body and potentially target quote unquote cancerous tumors or who knows what, issues in your gut that might be relating to mental issues in your brain. There is a connection between your body makeup in your gut and your brain chemicals. DARPA is researching that as well. PTSD and Lactobacillus ruderi veterans up in Colorado. I'm telling you guys, there's quite the connection. I see it so clearly now. I mean, literally over the last 2 weeks, we've really put together some important pieces that hadn't been there before. But now we're moving to this next level. And I've had this PDF queued up for a while that I've wanted to deal with, and it'll dovetail very nicely. I promise I will get there today. With tomorrow's show, finally, we were able to get some time and get to a point in the storytelling here of this Nightmerica, as Shali calls it, where Jeff Wefferson, I know you guys have heard him. He's actually been on UCY for probably, I don't know, I'd have to say close to 5 years now. He just broke episode 200. Jeff has spent a lot of time at looking at the interaction between humans and the cetaceans, the mammals that live in the sea. And he's delved into many different facets of it. But one of the things that Jeff is well versed at understanding is the military-industrial complex, the radio frequency spectrum, most specifically that VLF spectrum that we looked at back a few months ago, which is the same spectrum that the human brain works on, but it also happens to be the spectrum that they discovered back in the days of Bell Labs that most effectively communicated during wartime with submarines deep in the oceans. Now, we know that a good majority of our body is made up of water, so it would make sense that to be able to penetrate water deeply, that you might need to use some of the same frequencies that work best in our brains that communicate with signaling through water. Well, that's the type of stuff that Jeff has spent a lot of time studying, is the effects of this VLF communication on these mammals, though they be aquatic mammals. Dolphins and whales are mammals just like us, and the effects that it is having on these mammals. So I think that our conversation tomorrow, it's going to be midnight in Australia. It'll be 10 a.m. here Eastern. And we're going to try and meet up for a live from Australia interview. I don't have any software that's working pretty well right at the moment for Skype after that forced upgrade a few months ago. So live works better for me. But we are going to try to take us to some interesting places and things. Somebody who knows a lot more about me, I mean, not about me, but a lot more than me about this topic of this frequency. So I think we will have some very interesting conversations. But before we get there, I want to take a look now. We ended the show yesterday. We kind of dovetailed into smart dust, neural dust, and some of the new communication methods utilizing the ambient waves that are now in our environment. We know they're everywhere, though we can't see them. Remember, just because you can't see it, hear it, taste it, feel it, does not mean that it isn't there. If you had a spectrometer of some kind with a listening device, or maybe some sort of, I don't know, camera? No, it's got to be a spectrometer. You could pick up ambient radio signals, and then you could map them onto something and actually see what's going on. There was an artist, I think he might have been from Denmark. We talked about him a few years ago, and he had put together some art by taking the actual readings from a room just to show how bathed we are in these quote-unquote ambient radio waves that come from all the different spectrums. We found out from television, from FM radio, from cell phone, which is your microwave frequencies, Wi-Fi is microwave as well, and bounce those off of you or sensors in the room to be able to power them. So now you don't even need a power source for these miniaturized devices that, oh, by the way, they are working very hard at trying to find ways to get them inside of you, and not just get them inside of you, but get them inside of you long term. All these new types of coatings so your body doesn't reject them. These Trojan horse capabilities. I was reading about some nanotech that they were putting into some sort of like lipid encasement. Lipid is a fat. Fat is something that is readily available in our bodies. So typically our immune system doesn't set off alarm bells. Boop, boop, boop. They can also do things to bacteria, and this is why this is so concerning to me, because we do have natural bacteria in our bodies. Remember, our entire bodies are made up of like 7 different colonies. We had listened to a TED Talk back a few years ago that had looked at the full microbiome of the body and how insane it was. And depending on whether you were born naturally or born cesarean, you might be missing some of those colonies of bacteria. And they're really starting to believe now that some of that could affect your health, not only your physical health, but your mental health. I mean, there's definitely a lot to this. But just because, remember, we can't see microbes, and we don't understand microbes really at this point, except at some of the most educated levels. Hence why we should all take some of those free courses that MIT is offering in biology. I want to get like a whole consortium. We should get like a whole group and start a little news group. I could even put it on UCY, and we could weekly meet and share ideas or have a study group online. I don't know if anyone's in there for me and wants to do this. I really think that this would be something beneficial to all of us in the future. But, we just don't realize at what a microbial level our brains, our minds, our bodies, our lives, our personalities even can be influenced. Well, the smarty pants out there that are getting millions, if not billions of dollars of funding to crack these secrets of this living organism we call Earth, to make themselves godlike in the ability to be able to push a button to create life on the fly. And that is what they are out for. One of their other things is to live forever and be able to upload and download, just like you're a piece of software, and they have programming languages for cells now. We are just these little biological computers that they can manipulate, just as we have learned to manipulate the silicon world. Well, we have Fitbits for the nervous system. We have the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things will connect us as living organisms via some sort of micro device, whether it be some sort of silicon chip, some sort of biological, bacterial, flagellated entity that can swim around and go to different parts of our body and report back. Or if it is a hybrid that is some sort of combination of the two that has been funded again by our military-industrial complex. Either way, their long-term plan is to merge us with big data, you've discovered, put you in the database, big tech track all these bio statistics to be able to get a baseline on you. And once they get a baseline, then they can tell whether or not you are operating within parameters. And if you're not, for any myriad of different things, every type of biological indicator, that they will be able to get some sort of little mini monitor in there. They'll be able to bag, tag, and track. Put you on a little sine wave. They can tell. Just like you can when you're looking at a dashboard as a network administrator for all your networks of PCs. Remember, good old DARPA Dan had that Mimic software. If you remember that back a long time ago, he did an interview with Leslie Stahl on 60 Minutes, I believe. That's when he did that self-driving car, and he showed how easy it was to hack that self-driving car But he had also talked about another piece of software that they were using to infiltrate the quote-unquote dark web, woo, to be able to go after human traffickers and pedophilia and Russian hackers. Oh no, who's trying to steal Granny's bank account? They were using this for the scary part of the internet to be able to map not only groups of individuals that were contacting each other, but be able to index lots of different hidden things on the web. Well, remember, DARPA Dan, shortly before Regina Duggan, another slippery tentacle from DARPA that moved into Google that has since gone to Facebook. But before Regina Duggan left Google, DARPA Dan jumped over from DARPA to Google as well to help out Regina Duggan. So after she left, he kind of started his own little initiative there, tied into some of her wearable technologies, sensor technologies. We found out from Annie Jacobson when we listened to that interview back a week or so ago that she had talked about DARPA being into inventing sensors back from the Vietnam War. Back then they were big and clunky, not anymore. DARPA has really improved on their sensor technologies to the point where they're working on that Fitbit of the nervous system with Berkeley to make these little nano-sized multi-sensors that can be embedded right into your peripheral nervous system and potentially maybe even into your enteric nervous system. We found out the enteric nervous system is the actual vagus nerve that runs directly between your stomach and your brain. That enteric nervous system is directly manipulated by the gut bacteria in your stomach. And they found out when they took those poor little mousies and they severed that vagus nerve that there was no more communication or influence from the chemicals that the gut bacteria were producing to influence that direct connect to the brain. So they have proven in some scientific research that they do directly connect. And if DARPA, now with their ElectRx program, and remember we also have the program from Google with GlaxoSmithKline, and they call it electroceuticals, to be able to stimulate that nerve and interact with any of the organs that nerve connects to on its way up to the brain, or directly influence chemicals, hormones, enzymes that are produced in our brain. Guys, like this is literally direct connect through bacteria or electrical stimulation to influence who you are and how your body functions. They are selling this as 21st century medicine, guys. It is coming through the new military, medical, academic, industrial complex. And it is literally going to be gut snatchers to be able to tamp down on any of those potential rebellious tendencies or that stress, Johnny. You know, like the stuff that you kind of come back from the war amphitheater with when you start having bad thoughts. We'll just get rid of those bad thoughts. We even found a way to erase traumatic memories. Remember that one? This optogenetics therapy that they've been messing with, remember, that is all part of the Brain Initiative that was funded by Obama back in April of 2013. He announced that he was going to be on board and he was going to put federal dollars into cracking the secrets of the human brain. And then remember, we ran across a really strange statement, and this was way back. This was probably a few years ago, maybe not even, maybe a year and a half ago. We were reading something about the brain. We've been talking about the brain for a long time. But we ran across a statement that it said that neurologists were all clamoring for someone to create some sort of brain surveillance center. I was like, what an odd statement that is. Brain surveillance center, but not too long after, then we see in the 21st Century Cures Act, 399S, that says they are going to have a national neurological surveillance center for neurological diseases. Head to that good old Tommy Intel, leaving as the director of the National Institute of Mental Health in October 2015 and going over to Google's Verily division to help find ways to treat mental disease with Google and your voice patterns. Guys, it's coming. They are working on it. Everyone wants in your head. DARPA has been funding all kinds of projects for brain implants. Being able to upload your brain, like I said, neural dust. They're even looking for ways to control your emotions and to take care of your mental health. And even if you don't have a brain implant, there are other ways. Facebook, if you can even believe it, May 7th, 2017, in a publication called Healthline, healthline.com. Facebook wants to tap into your brain, literally. The social media company is one of several high-tech firms that is looking at the feasibility of brain interface technology. Facebook, you may know, knows a lot about you, but they aren't directly hooked up to your brain yet. The company announced last week, this was just a week ago, that their research and development team, known as Building 8, and guess who's in Building 8? I believe that is the secretive division that Regina Duggan has gone into, is currently developing technology that allows users to type words onto a computer with their minds. We've talked about this quite a number of times. It was very expensive for the mind-controlled keyboard and mouse, but hey, what a way to get the masses to open their little addicted arms, but to run it as a neat little new feature on Facebook. This is going to get not only the 7-second attention span of Americans involved, this is going to capture a global audience of people who find it a little too difficult to type anymore. Just kick back, Johnny, put your feet up, eat your Cheetos, and message your friends on Facebook on your addictive mobile device. I don't know if it's going to be mobile, but most certainly desktop with your brain. And remember, all it takes is a little cap called an EEG to be able to read your brain waves. We found DARPA was working on financing that as well. He wants to get it in every home and every school for under $30. Back to the story. So this Facebook announcement is raising some eyebrows, but the technology isn't as strange as it may seem. Their proposed device is classified as a brain-computer interface, which sounds like something out of science fiction. But remember, too, that 21st Century Cures Act, when it talked about that neurological surveillance center, it had mentioned that they were going to be non-intrusive surveillance, meaning, i.e., no cracking open a skull and putting in an implant. Oh, no. This will probably be some sort of little device that fits on your head. However, anyway, this brain-computer interface has actually existed in some capacity for decades. Development of the BCI for short, in fact, has been ongoing and demonstrated with volunteers in 1988 who were able to use devices to spell words on a computer screen for the first time ever using their brains. Facebook's announcement is largely a continuation of this line of development. Yeah, they must have pulled it out of a dusty DARPA filing cabinet and snuck it to Regina Duggan to say, here, try this. The real emphasis is not merely the ability to do the typing, but the speed of the typing. Company officials said their device would allow people to spell out words with their mind at a dramatically faster pace than ever thought possible, supposedly up to 100 words a minute. Holy crap. That is pretty fast, even on a keyboard, and it sure as hell is. I knew one person ever that could type that fast, and he would talk to me on the phone, and he'd be writing an article at the very same time. That was Madison Rupert, and you'd hear his fingers going literally on the keyboard, and it was the fastest thing I had ever heard. Facebook isn't the only place where this technology is being tested. In another prominent experiment, Jamie Henderson, a neurosurgeon at Stanford University, recently told Scientific American, quote, "We are approaching half of what, for example, I could probably type on a cell phone." As far as brain-computer interfaces go, the technology has been slow to garner widespread use. Right, so spit it out through Facebook. It is sometimes called an orphan technology because it is expensive, cumbersome, and currently limited applications. But so far, the technology has largely been relegated to a small sphere of medical usage, namely, as a possibility to help severely paralyzed individuals or those with certain neurological conditions like Parkinson's. As its name suggests, a BCI is often directly hooked to the brain, requiring an implant in the skull to work. And yeah, I had a picture one time of someone in a paraplegic in a wheelchair that had this neural implant that they could type on a computer. And it literally was this massive device that was sticking out of the top of their skull, hardwired into their brain. It was the most horrifying thing ever. I mean, it worked. It looked like it worked well, and it gave them a whole new line of communication. But when you look at something like that and you go, man, oh man, I mean, that's putting you in that perilous position that I hope someday, we're all going to find ourselves in that position, and there's going to be a decision to make as to whether or not you embrace some of this technology. And I guess none of us are ever going to really know. We can stand up and down, jump up and down all day like I do and say, oh my God, it's coming, merging with the machine. But if this is going to give you a second chance and you really don't have any other options, I don't know, might really be a tough decision. But anyway, this implant was literally hardwired to this guy's brain. Is this big thing sticking out of his head, and it was really a horrifying sight. But don't worry about that, Johnny, because one of the things that they are talking about doing is making a lot of this stuff wireless. So the speed of transfer has always been a problem as well, and they have looked at wearing these skull caps, and that's what I said, these EEG type things. This is some of the stuff that they were looking at with DARPA. Again, $30. Get one in every pot. Facebook also is not the only major technology company recently to announce a brain-computer interface. Of course, Neuralink, that is Elon Musk's new company, is also developing its own device, as is a company named Kernel, founded by entrepreneur and venture capitalist Brian Johnson, and I don't know him. It is mostly about bandwidth and the speed of the connection between your brain and the digital version, of yourself, particularly the output, says Musk to The Verge in an interview. He is keenly aware of the challenges, but also what this technology represents. And yeah, did you hear what he said? The digital version of yourself, particularly the output. Now remember, DARPA was just talking about uploading yourself as well, skills that you have learned to the cloud. And remember, of course, the grand poobah rotten cherry of them all, Ray Kurzweil, who since over the last 4 years or so has been director of engineering at Google also. It is a big cadre of nastiness that is going on. They're all working together, guys. This is one big team that has a goal that is to suck us into the machine forever. As a species, it is being termed as Human 2.0 H+, the next evolution of humanity. Self-directed evolution, I believe, is what Georgie Porgy Church called it. And they could even maybe term some of this as part of the de-extinction project. So anyway, as they are talking about now Facebook wants a piece of your brain pie, we had talked about Elon Musk as well, and a new story came out of Scientific American. This was May 3rd of 2017. Neuralink wants to wire your brain to the internet, and what could possibly go wrong? Elon Musk's Neuralink is probably a dangerous idea, but to the first person who fell into a fire pit, so was the fire. Oh, God, what a great analogy that is. It really conjures up some great images. The following essay is a reprint with permission from The Conversation, an online publication covering the latest research. Neuralink, which is, quote, developing ultra-high bandwidth brain-machine interfaces to connect humans to computers, is probably a bad idea. If you understand the science behind it, and that's what you wanted to hear, then you can stop reading. But this is an absurdly simple narrative to spin about Neuralink and an unhelpful attitude to have when it comes to understanding the role of technology in the world around us. Yes, embrace the machine and what we might do about it. It is easy to be cynical about what Silicon Valley does, but sometimes it comes up with something so compelling, fascinating, and confounding that it cannot be dismissed or embraced uncritically. So I guess that's a good thing. Putting aside the hyperbole and the hand-wringing that usually follows announcements like this, Neuralink is a massive idea, and it may fundamentally alter how we conceive of what it means to be human and how we communicate and interact with our fellow humans as well as non-humans. It might even represent, ding-a-ling-a-ling, the next step in human evolution. What did I tell you, people? This is really how they are pushing this stuff. They are talking about how amazing it is, and how great it'll be when we're all connected and we can upload and download and communicate without much of even an effort of speaking. You'll be able to communicate wirelessly with the cloud, with computers, and with the brains of anyone who has a similar interface. This flow of information between your brain and the outside world would be so easy, it would feel the same as your thoughts do right now. Eventually, we could even create virtual realities and meld our senses with an augmented one. Think about this, guys. Create your own reality in your head, like literally. But if that sounds extraordinary, so are the potential problems. First, Neuralink is not like putting an implant in your head designed to manage epileptic seizures or a pacemaker in your heart. This would be an elective surgery. So I guess he's talking about like literal brain interfaces. Elective surgery on healthy people for non-medical purposes. Right there, we are in a completely different ballpark, both legally and ethically. These are going to be augmented individuals. There seems to be only one person who has done such a thing. Oh, yeah, I read about this guy, and he got an infection, too. And that was a bonkers publicity stunt conducted by a Central American scientist who used himself, another one, as a research subject. He since suffered life-threatening complications. Yeah, it was a bad infection. And not a ringing endorsement, but not exactly a condemnation of the premise either. And I think he was thinking things backwards. I don't know. He had some issues, definitely. Look him up. Second, because Neuralink is essentially a communication system where the small matter of regulation and control exists, regardless of where you stand on the whole privacy and surveillance issue. I cannot imagine a scenario in which there would be an endless number of governments, advertisers, insurers, and marketing folks, just like we have now, looking to tap into your very biological core of your cognition to use it as a means of not only thwarting evildoers, but also to sell you stuff. I mean, this would be lunacy to connect our brains, but this is literally what they are looking at doing and what might already be going on psychotronically without our knowledge. And that's not to look, what is not to look forward to with that? And what if this tech normalizes, to like peer pressure, accidentally, voluntarily, mandatorily, to such a point where it does become mandatory for future generations to have a whole brain implant at birth? Just like you get a, what's it called, a circumcision that just kind of happens, or vaccinations that just kind of happens. To combat illegal or immoral behavior, however they are defining that in the future, to protect society as a whole. Maybe as part of your requirement for citizenship in our new country called Scary, that has an AI at the helm that wants to be able to monitor every type of brainwave, every type of dashboard that is being produced under its guise. Guys, this literally could be such the most scary. Like, my friend and I were talking last night, and the movie Tron came up, and that's come up a few times. I talked about Tron being sucked into the machine. That movie really influenced me as a kid. I was fascinated by the fact, and it was such a dystopic type scenario inside the machine, and I really think that was the first time that I ever kind of thought about that potential future somewhere along the way that maybe would never happen while I was alive. Well, guess what, guys? It may just very much so. And if not, in our potential grandchildren's time. This obviously opens up a massive set of questions that go far beyond the technical hurdles that might never be cleared. It nonetheless matters that we think about them now. Number one is brain security. There are no firewalls for the brain. If we've learned one thing, except for tinfoil hats that they sell on Amazon, if we have learned one thing, I dare you guys, you can sell anything on Amazon right now. You can create your own salesperson account, and you could sell anything. I dare a few other people out there to see how much business they can make if they designed a really nice tinfoil hat and do studies with it. Use it over your cell phone like they do with the microwave, and see if you can call it when it's under this tinfoil hat. That might actually prove that there's some EMF wave blocking abilities, at least for microwaves. And then make yourself an account, put it for sale, come up with a snatchy name like they did with that Electro Deflecto that's out there, and see if you can sell some. I don't know. I think that'd be a good way to finance independent media for sure. Anyway, especially if it works. If we've learned one thing from this era, besides being able to sell anything on Amazon and make any type of business on the web, if we've learned anything from this era of smart everything, it is that also smart means that is exploitable. And remember, we found out yesterday, Internet of Things is completely insecure. So DARPA is going to take care of that as well with their shape-shifting immune system for the internet, run by AI. Whether it is your fridge, your TV, your car, or your insulin pump, or soon to be your neural Fitbit, once you connect something to something else, you have just opened up a means for it to be compromised. Doors are funny like that. They are not picky about who walks through them. So a door in your head raises some critical security concerns. We can only begin to imagine what forms hacking might take in the future when you have a direct line into the minds of others. Would this be the dawn of cognitive law, a legal regime that pertains exclusively to that squishy stuff, that gray, slippery, oily stuff between your ears? And what it really all comes down to is this. Across a number of fields that intersect law, philosophy, technology, and society, we are going to need some answers to questions that no one has yet even thought of asking, at least not often enough, and at least for the right reasons. We have faced, are facing, and will face incredibly complex and overwhelming problems that may well not like the answers to, but it matters that we ask good questions early and often, and if we don't, then they will be answered for us. And that's what we have to worry about, guys. We have all these big corporate conglomerates that are also working in the back end and own all this technology that is bagging and tagging us, putting it into databases. They all have a piece of this pie, this technocracy that is becoming beyond invasive, that is going to become the big pulsating brain in the sky that influences and watches everything. And these large corporations aren't really bound by any type of we the people law. We don't have any say necessarily except by our pocketbooks what Google does on the back end, but Google does have a lot to say about every single one of us. They're kind of holding the cards. They got the ace of spades right now. And they are yet the ones, as well as these other large conglomerates, that are all sitting down together to decide the ethics and the safety and where the kill switches are going to reside on this technology. Kind of seems like the fox tending the henhouse on this one. So anyway, as we have not only Google wanting to monitor mental health, Facebook looking at brain implants, DARPA looking at brain implants, even a private individual, Elon Musk, looking at brain implants. We have DARPA also looking to control emotions. They have that program called Narrative Networks. They not only are looking to control emotions by creating hormones and looking at different ways, again, with bacterias, that L-Reuteri, but also with zippity zaps and stories to be able to reach your inner human, to be able to find the way humans have passed down legacies from our very beginnings. Remember, there was no written word before that. It was all about the narrative, the story, the spinning of the facts. And as we have fake news and we have this new definition of what is truth, the official story. Remember, the official story is always told by the victors in the war. That's what they're working on doing. They are able to manipulate different forms of our biology and our psychology, and even manipulate them through psychotronic means, microwaves in particular, to be able to hear voice of God weapon. If there was ever an example of them being able to do that, that's right there, radio spectrum. But also by studying neurobiology, the brain, chemical sensations, and how that all influences how receptive we are to things. That oxytocin button is one of the ways that they have discovered to do that, and they have found ways to produce that. Well, let's take it one step further now, and this is the document I have wanted to get to for weeks on end. It is titled, From PSYOPs to Neuro War, What Are the Dangers? It was a paper that was presented at the ISAC-ISSS conference in Austin, November 14th to 16th, 2014. Armin Kershaw wrote this paper from East Carolina University in Greenville, North Carolina. From PSYOP to NeuroWar, what are the dangers? Well, there is a scientific race going on for decoding the human brain. We've established that pretty concretely. Currently, and near future technology, it will be possible not only to merely influence the enemy's mind and behavior, but also to actually control it. Breakthroughs in neuroscience will enable new types of non-lethal weapons. Remember, there was a big push even at a local and police level for non-lethal weapons. And these will allow for precise behavioral manipulation, ding, ding. For example, through behavioral altering neurotropic drugs, ding-a-ling-a-ling, like through your gut. Also through remote electromagnetic brain monitoring and stimulation, ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling. I can't do higher octaves. As well as through acoustical weapons, beaming voices directly into enemies' heads, voice of God, ding-a-ling. And even through holographic projections, and that would be blue beam, still not confirmed, as well as other complex battlefield illusions, quote unquote. Within 10 years, and this is written in 2014, soldiers will be equipped with transcranial magnetic stimulation devices. We've talked about those, or other brain-computer interfaces, ding ding, and it would make it possible for their commanders to steer their emotions as well as control their thoughts. Ding! Remember, the experimentation starts with the soldiers and then gets rolled out eventually to the entire population. This paper will discuss how the emerging sixth domain of warfare, which is the mind, is likely to transform military operations and profoundly change how wars are conducted. It is argued that military operations will be increasingly centered on achieving desired psychological effects, which will, on the positive side, reduce the need for physical destructuring. What? For physical destruction and killing. At the same time, neural weapons will also create new and unprecedented dangers resulting from the misuse and proliferation of just this war that'll be going on between us, Russia, China, and rogue agents, which will need to be addressed through development of a concept called neurosecurity, which we just talked about, that will need to be outlined. Neuroscience is currently one of the fastest growing areas of the United States. Remember, there is a big collaboration going on in neuroscience right now between the U.S. and Israel. It is an interdisciplinary field that seeks to connect and to integrate all of my favorite subjects, which is why I'm thinking maybe I should start looking at the field of neuroscience for study. It integrates calculus, biology, genetics, physiology, molecular biology, general chemistry, organic chemistry, biochemistry, physics, theory, and philosophy, behavioral psychology, perceptual psychology, cognitive psychology, computer theory, and philosophy. It is inevitable that neuroscience research will impact on national security in very complex ways in the next decade, which has already been the subject of a 2008 Defense Intelligence Agency, and that is the DIA-sponsored study by the National Research Council. Advances in neuroscience might even trigger a neurotechnology arms race, which I think it already has. So we saw things already coming out of Russia, as nations that could leverage neurotechnology better than others could gain a decisive advantage in warfare. This paper argues that new methods of influencing the brain and the central nervous system are thereby our mental capacity, emotions, and thought could become central to future military strategies in the conduct of war, conflict, and economic competition. While neuroweapons and neurowarfare may still sound like science fiction or something that might only arrive in the very distant future, ding, 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 guess what? It is notable that neuroweapons are neither in principle technologically impossible, nor do they necessarily require technologies that are not yet in existence. And we have talked about a lot of those i.e. the radio spectrum. There are, in essence, weapons that target the brain and the central nervous system. Depending on the precise definition of the term neural weapon, one could even argue that some primitive versions of them may already exist, such as the commercially available myotron, which overloads the central nervous system through direct contact and thereby jams brain signals, and that controls voluntary muscle movements. I'd also say then probably a taser, right? That is considered a non-lethal weapon, and it does incapacitate your central nervous system momentarily. There are also various neuropharmacological drugs that impact on mental capacity, wasn't that LSD, part of the CIA experiments, and behavior that are currently being researched by the defense establishment around the world for possible usage in combat scenarios. Amongst them, modafinil, I don't know that one, oxytocin, ding-a-ling-a-ling, and propranolol, I don't know that one either. Monitoring or manipulation of the brain and the central nervous system remotely can be done with already existing technologies such as, we've talked about this, EEGs, and that is what DARPA is now funding, $30 at home and at school for everyone. Or also another device called an small f, capital NIRS headset, radio frequency waves, microwaves, or pulsed ultrasound specifically targeted at specific areas of the brain. Considering recent investments and advances in neuroscience by many major countries, especially in areas such as brain stimulation and brain-computer interfaces, neuroweapons, and neural warfare, it could emerge already in the decade of 2015 to 2025. It's one of the fastest growing segments. Furthermore, the potential consequences of mapping and decoding the brain could become more grave than any other scientific breakthrough in human history. I can't even believe we're reading this, since it could affect every concept of free will, ding, and individual autonomy, ding, on which a liberal democratic society is based. Addressing the dangers that come with future development and proliferation of neural weapons and the resulting neural warfare would require a comprehensive approach toward neural security that can minimize the dangers, which will be outlined below. Now, you guys are going to have to read this whole paper because it is very long. I think I originally saw 17 pages. It continues on the growth of military neuroscience. February. So it was February of 2013. President Obama, ding-a-ling, announced the Brain Initiative. This is when it all began. That provided additional $100 million annually in neuroscience research funding through the National Science Foundation from fiscal year 2014 until 2024. This comes at a time of overall shrinking federal research funding, which highlights that the Obama administration considered brain research to be a research field of strategic importance. The officially stated goal of the Brain Initiative is to, quote, generate an array of physical and conceptual tools needed to determine how healthy brains function over the lifespan of humans as well as other organisms, and to develop a workforce, ding, to create and implement these tools aimed at establishing a more comprehensive understanding of how thoughts, memories, and actions emerge from the dynamic activities within the brain. While the initiative aimed at civilian and health applications, there's also a growing concern by bioethicists like Joseph Moreno and other neuroscientists that their research could also be used for military applications that, at the very least, create some new, challenging, and ethical dilemmas. Some of these have already been discussed in 2012 Royal Society report called Brainwave Module, Neuroscience, Conflict, and Society. There are also concerns that were grounded because of previous experiments to research mind control, of course, during the Cold War with the MK Ultra projects of 1953 to 64. There were also other experimentation that went alongside the U.S. Army's biological and other chemical warfare experimentation. There were things aimed at the development of truth drugs and psychochemical warfare methods and brain implants for remotely controlling test subjects' brains. So, don't worry about it, people. Let's create something to control the brain directly and something that can be rolled out to everyone. They also have been worried about these enhancement technologies, which is another piece of this pie, to be able to make these super soldiers that maybe someday could be rolled out even as a commercial entity to be able to make better humans if you can pay for it. Weapons developers see the warfighter increasingly as the weakest link in the kill chain. Humans have fragile physical bodies and minds. They need water, food, and sleep. And up until now, very little could be done to overcome these human limitations. But don't worry about that, because there are approaches that are promising in the terms of neuroscientific human enhancement, and that is neuropharmacology, brain stimulation, and these brain implants. There are also directed energy weapons that can produce a weapon effect. Most importantly, lasers, high-powered microwaves, high-energy radio frequency weapons, and sound or acoustical weapons. What is special about these is that their effects are scalable from lethal to non-lethal, and they are called anti-personnel. There are long-range acoustical devices as well that could direct loud sound that is painful over hundreds of meters. And there are ones that are now being looked at to be turned into biological non-lethal weapons using microwaves that beam directly into the brain, and they can cause pain or death using the thermal effect. This is very scary, guys. So what are some of these frequencies doing to not only humans, but other life forms on this planet? That's where we're going to leave it for the interview.